Andrew on the bottom playing Boros Energy. And it looks like Grayson's on the play. We see a tap Breeding Pool. Not exactly an explosive start for our combo player, right?
Yeah, exactly. But this is not exactly, you're not trying to use any of the ways to add extra green mana. I believe the Chancellors were in the previous iterations. You could Neoform on turn 1, get Gristlebrand, win the game. You can still do that stuff, but it does have to wait till at least turn 2 for the namesake card Neoform.
Turn 2, how awful for them,
I know, it's such a slow deck.
Yeah, so we see a fetch here for Andrew into an Oscillate Pride, one of the better 1-drops, of course. Passing back over to Grayson, and this is a big turn for Grayson. We see a MDFC land come down. 3 life is paid, and pass him a turn.
Yep, so no start to get it going here, no Neoform to be able to, get a Gristlebrand into play. Galta is the other card. Galta Stampede Tyrant is maybe one of the newer additions, being able to put any number of creature cards into play, so you see Neoform, maybe not do a lot, and then, oh my god, I have 14, 15, 25 power in play, and you kind of just overwhelm your opponent pretty quickly.
So flat stamp for Andrew, probably gets in for 1, deal 1, gain 1. We got a fetch crack here. What's the pacing for Grayson in this matchup? So with Andrew not having a ton of interaction, being Boros Force, no counter spells, no discard, is Grayson able to kind of sit back and chill? What's the pacing like?
Yeah, chill as much as you can. When Andrew does go Oscillate Pry into a Johnny, then Goblet Bombardment, that kind of thing, Boros Energy still has these aggressive kills, especially if we're going triple 1-drop like this, where, you can be pressuring lethal turn 4, turn 5, but really, neither of these decks are interacting with each other game 1 pretty much at all. Static Prison, stuff like that can actually do some stuff to Grayson's side, but Grayson, the only interaction you see from this deck, Pact of Negation and Consigned to Memory. And, that is not exactly the best interaction here against Boros.
All right, so we see that triple 1-drop, as you said, with the Ragavan and the Oscillate Pride. So a lot of bodies in play. Grayson's going to fire off an end-step Planar Genesis. Cool little impulse effect. They also put a land into play. Take a card. And some tokens in the way here for Andrew, perhaps.
Yep, just getting infinite cats, basically, at this point. Maybe not quite, Felidar Guardian Saheeli, but this is the next best thing. There's that many cats. So both, there should be 3 in play, I believe, now.
Oh, it's game time, folks.
Oh, no, just 2.
Yep. So here's the Allosaurus Rider, 2 cards pitched to pay the alternate cost. Here comes the Neoform. The deck is doing its thing. Can go in there and get a creature of a cost 1 Morven Rider, which is 8. And what 8-drop is it going to be?
It is almost assuredly always Gristlebrand. Now, if you already have Gristlebrand in your hand, you can get the gigantic dino here, and then put something into play. And yeah, this is really nice. You can, oh man, is that Zendagos? So this is going for a more combo finish here. Wow, okay.
So Galta comes in and we'll put in the Xenagos. We see, is this double power and haste, I believe, on Xenagos, correct? Double
power, haste, and just win the game on the spot. Okay, this version from Grayson's a little different here. I like this.
Yeah, so
wow.
The fair Neoform deck still winning on turn 3, and we got to see there in that game of what's going to happen with Boros, where they kind of just play creatures, right?
Yeah.
So we hop over to our sideboard here, where Boros will get a little bit of help. We see 1 Celestial Purge, 2 Clarion Conqueror, 2 Deafening Silence, a Ghost Vacuum, a March or Otherworldly Light, 3 Molten Rain, 1 Charmer, 1 Chant, 1 Showdown, 1 Wear Tear, 1 Wrath of the Skies. What's Andrew got to do here to be able to not get trampled on by a 24-power dinosaur?
There is not really a ton that you can be doing here. There is not a great sideboard for this. Maybe not a deck that is expected by everyone. Orm's Chant, you can definitely use that as a form of Time Walk. You can bring in some Molten Rains if you, when you're on the play, maybe a Ragavan on 1, and you can Molten Rain on turn 2. That seems good enough to me, at least on the play, maybe not on the draw. And that's about it. That's all I'm really seeing.
Listen, if there's a problem, Molten Rain can solve it.
Exactly.
All right. And then on Grayson's side, we got 1 Beseiju, 2 Force of Vigor, 1 to the Floodmaw, 2 Murktide Regent. Do those get lost on the way to the Murktide deck?
I guess so.
2 Mystical Dispute, 2 Orm's Chant, 2 Suspend, and 3 Veil of Summer. Now, of course, Grayson's going to be sideboarding in more so against Andrew's sideboard than main deck. What's Grayson got?
Not much here either, but this is the case of, I think we already have such a good matchup from the Neoform that there's not a lot that's coming in. what Grayson's sideboard screams out to me is I need to beat the decks that are controlling and interacting with me. So Veil for all the Thoughtseize decks, Mystical Dispute for any kind of counter spells, and then Murktide Regen as a nice sidestep when your opponent has a ton of interaction for your combo.
Yeah, and this is kind of, Boros is obviously a very, very powerful deck, currently top dog in the format, but it is a deck that is exploitable in that way, where, without these counter spells, these Thoughtseizes and stuff, there are weaknesses to these combo decks, and of course Grayson. And that game one looked pretty convincing.
Yeah, looked really, really good. I was watching a good amount of streams from people that play Boros Energy, and every time they saw one of those, breeding pools tapped or anything like that, any of these lands that you lose 3 life to play from the flip side of them, it always felt like they were sighing and really, really unafraid or really afraid to play that matchup.
So speaking of Murktide, of course, being a Dragon Storm, I'll wait for our players to shuffle up here. Remind you, Tarkir Dragon Storm, order now. All right, this set's been a really, really awesome, kind of foray into Magic's lore. Going back to Tarkir, a lot of awesome things happening in limited in the set, constructed. It's been a good one. What's your favorite Tarkir card, Corey?
Ooh, favorite Tarkir card. I really like Voice of Victory. I think that card is sweet. Being able to punish all these control mages, I'm a big fan of it. Of course, Corey Steelcutter is probably the most impactful one, that's for sure. But what about yours?
I like Voice a lot too, actually. It also attacks for 3, which I like.
Yeah, that
cool
thing's huge.
Stuff too. Cool card. So order now, StarCityGames.com/MTG-TDM. All right, back down to our match here for game number 2. Grayson, of course, up a game on top. And looks like Andrew might be taking a mulligan.
Looks like it.
I think more pressure on Andrew to have, the right cards, right?
Yeah, definitely have the start, be able to interact in a meaningful way. I'm just still trying to piece together anything that would really help. You can bring in cards like Deafening Silence if you really want to prevent your opponent from fully winning the turn, the turn that they search up, one of their big, powerful 8-drops. But I just don't think that's enough. You can still just play a giant creature, say go, play another giant creature after that. I bet it still comes in, but we'll see.
Give me Molten Rain.
Yes, I want Molten Rain.
Just give me a good Molten Rain. Nothing else needs to be said here. So
yes.
Andrew got a Marsh Flats on 1 with no 1-drop, which is definitely a bit telling of Andrew's hand. We see an MDFC land for Grayson coming in tap once again, so no rush on turn 1 here. And step fetch crack for Andrew. Let me get a little Surveil on here, the Elegant Parlor.
Always looking to put Flage into the yard pretty much every single time.
That's a nice one, yeah. When your Surveil land is also an Entomb, that's not bad.
That's pretty good. That is pretty good.
Probably looking for any sort of aggression here, I would think, there, right?
Yeah, definitely want to get something going as fast as possible and then interact in any small, meaningful way that Andrew can.
All right, so you see Plains go to the bin. Andrew going to draw for turn and look for a little bit of help here. Got to apply some pressure. All right, let's fetch again. Arid Mesa to the bin. Lights out for Andrew, not super relevant. Probably going to be either dead or not dead.
Exactly, yeah. I don't know if we can fit that in where that 19 is, just put dead or not dead, but we'll try to work on that.
I'll write a strongly worded email to our directors.
Okay, absolutely.
Yep. So shuffling up here. And 20 life is a lot. The cards in this deck, we see a Johnny here, they are powerful. Not necessarily huge, though.
Yeah, this is a deck that is aggressive. It is our go-to aggressive deck in the format, but, that doesn't mean it can kill on turn 3. This is still a good old solid aggressive deck that wins on maybe turn 4, turn 5 pretty consistently.
Let's look at Gemstone Mine there. Here we go. Okay, party time.
Yep.
There's Allosaurus Rider. Unsurprisingly, here is another Neoform. And Andrew can't look too happy about this one.
Remember when I was saying that this is not a great matchup for Boros Energy? It's really not a good matchup for Boros Energy. And that's the thing. Grayson has to have the draw, and he has both times. But, man, I think all the onus is on Grayson to have it. And if he does, it's just game, and there it is. That's going to go get Zendigo. You're going to be able to do the exact same thing that Grayson did last game, and wow.
That was clean.
That was really clean. And, just like the old Neoform lists, you feel just as bad when you die on turn 2 games in a row, especially when you're on the feature match here.
Yeah, and it's tough. I mean, this is almost, you could definitely say a match that was lost in deck selection where, it's sort of, you didn't want to put counterspells with Thoughtseize in your deck. This is what can happen to you. So Grayson takes down the match in one of the most convincing matches I've seen in quite a while now. It's absolute domination.